Hi everybody. I am Reverend Dr. Heidi Clark, Heidi for just short, and I'm here with my very dear friend Manny. Manny, would you give a quick introduction about yourself?
Thank you for having me, Heidi. My name, as Heidi mentioned, my name is Manny Berrido. My full name is Emmanuel Berrido. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, the beautiful shores of the Caribbean, and have been living in the United States for about 18 years now. And I'm a musician by profession. I'm also on the verge of completing a PhD in music composition and music theory at the University of Pittsburgh, and I am Heidi's successor at North Hills Community Baptist Church.
Yeah, so that's how Manny and I are connected. As I mentioned in the article, I was at North Hills Community Baptist Church, which shorter version is NHCBC. I was there for a total of almost 2 decades. Not consecutively, there was a little space where I was in Connecticut. That's a little bit of a long commute. And then November 2023, I left NHCBC and went into academia work. And Manny came along and has done amazing things. And so that is how we know each other. And so if we do the math a little bit, math usually embarrasses me. It's been about a year and a half or so that you've been in the position, Manny.
Yeah, unofficially, I started in December. I think my first Sunday was December 16th, 2023. You had just left.
Oh, plunged into Advent.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And I remember
Hmm.
the choir was preparing like some really hard music,
Yes.
and it was wild because it was almost so it was really fast and really involved right away, but also because of that circumstance, we were able, the choir and the music ministry in general, and myself and my wife, we were able to connect very fast.
Hmm.
So the way that it happened is that you had retired already. And I
Hmm.
remember when I got a call from Carrie um, back then. Uh, and I was kind of like looking at the church. I was talking a little bit, to be honest.
Hmm.
And so I had seen that you had announced your resignation, and Jonathan Jones was the chair of the committee looking for the new music director. And I remember it was like probably like 2 or 3 weeks before I came on for the first time.
Hmm.
And what happened was that Pastor Felicia Zamora has a friend at Pitt who knows an ex-student at Pitt, somebody who graduated with their PhD already. Her name is Miranda. And she reached out to me and she's like, "Hey, I don't know if you're doing this kind of work, but I know you have worked at church before. And they're looking for somebody. Maybe this is something that interests you." So I emailed Pastor Felicia, and then I got a call from Carrie. And what I always think is that there was a very high opportunity for it to go wrong.
Yeah.
It could have been because I've soon realized that the music ministry at North Hills has a big personality, and had it back then, still has it today. The
Hmm.
only thing is that now I am part of the family. But back then, when I got there, I realized that the ministry, the choir, which is how my first engagement with the church, the choir had rehearsal, and I had to negotiate and navigate the
The bass
dynamic.
section. Just the bass section alone will keep you on your toes, right?
Well, tech I will never forget how the bass section, as usual, was giving me a hard time,
Yes.
and then I kind of like they they pitched a ball and I batted it right away.
Hmm.
And Gary said like, "Oh well, this might work out after all, or this,
Yes.
and yeah, so I became an interim director, and it was a time of great transition at the church.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
so not only where was the North Hills congregation transitioning out of their current pastor, but we were basically it was transitions
Hmm.
everywhere, and but it was very, I cannot explain it other than it was providential that we met.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, like I said, it could have gone wrong so many times and so much, and
Hmm.
it did not. And it actually was a very smooth transition, if you ask me, from me standing outside. I don't know if for
Hmm.
you it was that way.
Yeah, and I think that is it can go wrong. And when we don't make space for how transitions should go or have purpose for it, especially as I'll talk a little bit about as musicians, what's kind of distinct about us in transitioning and so forth. That's different than like an office worker. Um, we set ourselves up for a lot of, we could really fail fast.
Oh yeah.
If we have to have a lot of purpose in how we transition in the vocations that we Rubik's Cube together, musicians, we gig life it. And so we are quick to, um, kind of fall into the pitfalls of just the creative beings that we are. I think one of the things is that musicians, I don't know about you, Manny, but some days I'm amazed. I don't think you, but for me, I can speak for myself. It's amazing I can get through a doorway because of my head and my ego. Musicians, we just can't fit through doors because we think a lot of ourselves, right?
Yeah, well, so there's so many layers to that
Yeah.
part, and I could get into like commentary of current sort of employment prospects for musicians and
Yes.
the economy and
Hmm.
everything. So there's a big sort of like, so we both went to music school, right?
Hmm.
So I think, and maybe people who are following and seeing this interview will see that environments in music school can be very competitive, toxic,
It can
and
be very territorial too. Like I'm the first chair for this group, or I've been in the accompanist for this ensemble for so long. We sometimes have, as musicians, just in a stereotypical big brush stroke, saying that we're kind of like dogs and lots of little fire hydrants. We just kind of mark our territory everywhere we go, and it can be very competitive. But on the flip side, I've experienced, especially at my time at Duquesne, that it was. Um, if you do better, I do better. And if I do better, you do better. And it was really is wonderful, not competitive, but encouraging. It can be that as well.
yeah, and that's great. And I honestly I'm encouraged by uh, I like many in our age group and kind of walk of life. Like you have a lot of friends who are now like becoming
Mhm.
the next academics
Yeah.
and teachers and instructors and conductors and directors.
Mhm.
And I am encouraged by how good people are striving to make their environment.
Mhm.
So the next generation doesn't have to suffer the professor who is a jerk and who,
Hmm.
who gratuitously sort of makes your life impossible,
Yeah.
which, which honestly, in our church ministry, it's a little bit different because we're dealing with a completely voluntary body of performers, of artists and
Hmm.
musicians who are not here to just play.
No.
People are here to play, obviously, but people are here also to serve. And when we start thinking about that, when we're dealing with that kind of, so we really don't have the option, or at least I don't feel like I do, not that I want it either, of being like those professors who make
No.
life uh, impossible for their students. Honestly, yeah, you
Yeah.
know,
But
I
I
forgot
think,
done with that, but I was gonna
yeah.
say.
No, and I think also as musicians, because we're just creative people, we have super highs and super lows. And so when we go through these transitions, sometimes those really high ends and low ends of the spectrum of emotions can really impact us a little deeper because of that. And sometimes I think just in general, when we have transitions of liminality, of closing a chapter, opening a new chapter, we imagine it like a book where it's a singular page where we have words of our what we were doing beforehand, and then on the other side of the same page the new chapter begins of our new whatever path we're on, and it's the same page, but it's not. We really need to make space for a bunch of blank pages so that we can process those highs and lows, so we can process how our egos are being impacted by this. And ego's not in a negative way, but just our identities and so forth. And also, how do we process this as creatures who like to be like to f we're in a way we're kind of like homeless because we go from gig to gig to gig to gig, and so we do get a little territorial in that way because we're always seeking a new home, a new place to express ourselves creatively. But really, it's not that singular page. There is almost a chapter that needs to be inserted there when we transition. And um, when we also transition in the church, it's also like the musician. It's not a typical office. Like on Friday, you have stale cake in the conference room, and they give you your little box, and you take your desk stuff and you leave on Friday, and they escort you out. It's not like that, especially when you leave a gig, because you most likely will play with these musicians at some point or another. Um, it's a to be continued in many cases, and also especially for church, these are these are your family members. So how do you, for me, my question was that I reflected briefly on was how do I go from piano to pew, right? And how do I still do that? And also not just for myself to know my identity now in the pew, but also for the congregation to understand it as well, because they're along for the ride and making enough space between those two chapters for us to come to that understanding. Um, and church people, we love them, but I imagine the SNL, church lady, well, isn't that special? We love our church family, right? And so, but they are along for the ride, and so we have to be sensitive to their emotions and their thoughts and feelings that go along with that time of change. So, yeah, for sure.
I remember when we were preparing. I forget. I think we were preparing the Christmas
Hmm.
Eve service or something like that. You were there, and it was probably your first day. And I remember like a few of the members deferred to asking you about it, and obviously like I didn't mind that. I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, if Heidi has the answer, I'll whatever. And then you were like, no, no, whatever he wants to do.
Hmm.
And that was it was a moment that obviously, like I said, like I didn't mind that at all. But yeah, like people could get confused as to where how things could work, and that's inoffensive, right? That's like
Hmm.
one little small thing. There are so many ways in which could go wrong
Hmm.
too.
And one of the flags that happened before I ever made the choice to go and to leave and to go back into the classroom. I taught elementary general music for 10 years in public schools and did children's choirs at UConn and all those things. Um, I really love teaching. I love educating, and I knew I wanted to go back. I didn't know how it was going to work out. God had a plan, and I was just waiting to figure it all out. But one of the little flags that really bothered me was a couple months before I made that decision, somebody referenced in somebody in the congregation referenced the choir as my choir. And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. That's not right. This is and the NHCBC choir. This is not Heidi's choir. And that rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, oh, either I'm not doing my job well serving in my role, my identity as a servant leader in this church, and or slash, or I've been here too long. And so that was it was a subtle cue, but it really kind of really helped me put all the pieces together of how I was going to leave and reasons why I had to go. So,
That's interesting. I mean, there's also it's also like sometimes you cannot really control how
yeah.
we'll see your role
Hmm.
there. Some people will um be like, yeah, Heidi's choir, you
Hmm.
know, but it's just easier for people to categorize that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it they don't may not have the words to be able to
Right.
assist themselves. Like it's sort of, I'm sure you've experienced this where they say, "Oh, Manny, you played beautiful today." Yes, they're complimenting you, but really they're saying, "Oh my gosh, God, your music assisted me in worship today." They don't have the lingo, but we can decipher that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you have to have the presence of mind not to let it get to you in any way. You know, well,
Yeah.
it's not like
Yeah.
being stoic. I'm not saying that, but it's like yeah. I mean, if somebody comes and expresses appreciation of of the way that you did it on a particular day, you
Hmm.
thank them for listening
Yes.
and find what kind of thank them if you do it for the sake of it being meaningful or something like that, then you can express a thankful thought about that. Yeah, I'm glad you
Hmm.
found it meaningful.
Hmm.
I'm glad it spoke to you.
Hmm.
I'm glad you were blessed by it.
Hmm.
You don't need to become like your head doesn't need to go grow to 2 meters wide.
Hmm.
Um, and the other way around too, like if
Hmm.
it's something that might tick your ego or might like be offensive, like I think as long as we understand that people usually mean well.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
not always,
absolutely.
but
Not
people
always.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's wherever, wherever you
Yeah.
go. But people usually, I remember I used to have a boss in Miami. I used to work for corporate America. I worked for a food distribution company for a number of years, designing packaging. And
Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I did not know that.
I guess we hadn't talked about that. Yeah.
It needs to go on your CV, Manny. That's just it.
Yeah. So also, by the way, a little parenthesis on that. My last day at that company, we really did go to the conference room to eat stale cake.
You did?
It wasn't, no, but then we went up to a pub and I had a shirt from the company and I asked everybody to sign it, kind of
Mhm.
like it was in school.
Yeah.
I don't know
But
what happened.
that's a ritual that actually helped you come to terms. There was a more a finiteness about it because you took time and it's those I talk about the R word ritual, Baptist. Ooh, we don't want to talk about that. But that it really helps us being able to holistically understand or help our body to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Not just my head says, "Oh, today's your last day." Sometimes we leave our heart and our body in the rearview mirror as we transfer or go to a new vocation, a new chapter.
I mean, it's like an instrument. You have to practice doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, I did a lot of preparatory work. I mentioned my friend Amy she is amazing. And her book and just her as my friend really helped me. It was a long process that I went through leading up, the day of, and even afterward. And so I think now because I filled in those blank pages between those two chapters, when you texted me a couple weeks ago, I said, "Hey, can you sub for me?" It's not weird because I have a complete understanding of my role as a layperson in the pew who's just going to help you out and sub for you, help you out as my friend. Um, And I believe our congregation understands that too.
Absolutely.
We've taken them along with that role, and that experience. And so it's not weird. And so that's where we are. This is how we've gotten to the point where I'll be actually back in the piano bench for what is it, 5 weeks, as you do some amazing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but tell us real quick, where are you going to be going and what are you going to be doing that's really awesome?
So I've since about 2019, I went for the first time to a contemporary music festival called New Music on the Point. They had just installed American Composer or Performer Fellowship, and I was the first one who got it.
Hmm.
I had just graduated from my master's in Ithaca College, and
It's
it was
gorgeous.
gorgeous. It was great.
Sorry, bad
It was
joke.
a great transition since we're talking about that,
Hmm.
like how you do things after like something like being, graduating from a degree or getting a degree or whatever. Um, it was really good for me to do these sort of more professional things. And so they seem to like me enough to keep having me in the years after, obviously, like taking into account 2020 that we didn't do anything in person. And I wasn't sure whether I was gonna be back, but I am this time around, and I just kind of very I was it was a little scary because I had to talk to the music ministry committee. I had to talk to the pastor. I had to make sure that people were okay with me taking such a long
Hmm.
leave of absence because it's not only this festival, but anyway, this festival is in Vermont. It's right in the shores of Lake Dunmore, at a beautiful camp called Point Counterpoint, and they do basically music that was written in the 20th century and
Hmm.
onwards. So I've seen so many good performances, the music of John Cage, Morton Feldman,
Hmm.
music of Amy Beth Kirsten,
Oh, cool.
the artistic director over there, her name is Amy Williams, and she was the one who recruited me to come to Pitt. After we met at New Music on the Point, I remember like we were hanging out, and she's like, "You should come to Pitt. Like, why don't you send an application, and see, and we'll check it out and see what you see if you want to come here, and if it works." And it did. So
Mhm.
here we are. So, she is now my dissertation advisor.
Oh,
So
that's so cool. Once
yeah,
again, a full circle thing, right?
absolutely right. And then after that, so my wife Monse is joining me. She's touring with the Tamburitzans, and she's gonna go do Tamburitzan stuff for a little while, for about 2 weeks,
Hmm.
or yeah, about 2 weeks, and
They're
then
very intense tours.
it's incredible. They're gonna do like 11 dates and like
Hmm.
the 11 days and like 9 shows, something like that.
Yes.
That's crazy. And so when she's done, she's gonna come back to Pittsburgh and come to Vermont to be with me at New Music on the Point. And then we're both driving back for about, and then in about 18 hours after that, we're jumping over to Spain because I am working at another festival that's called Valencia International Performing Arts Summer Festival, VIPA Festival,
Hmm.
also a competition. And there I am faculty and I am executive director as
That's
well.
so neat.
So it's a lot of really good stuff. And one of the things that I like the most is that I feel like I get to do a lot of good. Music in all its versions, in all its facets, or in all the places where you could be as a musician.
Hmm.
It's a very scary, um, uncertain profession.
Hmm.
And I love
Yes.
working with the students because we can all be uncertain together, and it's also good for people to see, for example, things like the work that I do at North Hills with the congregation, and musically we do very good
Hmm.
stuff, and also like there's a space for you to be other than cutthroat, competitive
Yeah.
musician. Like here you can, like when you become or you decide to become a servant in
Hmm.
that way, you can also rest.
Hmm.
You have different challenges, obviously. You have to negotiate different things
Hmm.
in in the church. And I don't have to tell you anything about that, and
Hmm.
probably anybody who will watch this interview will know what we're talking about. You have to negotiate
Yes.
so many things, but it's but there are things that happen out there in the gigging world that you
Hmm.
don't have to worry about, you
Yeah.
know? And that is also good.
Yeah.
And if you have the personality and the chops and you can do that. You can do
Hmm.
it. So
Yeah.
uh, anyway, so that's long way of saying the things that I'll be doing this summer and why you are coming,
Yeah.
coming back to the piano bench at
Yeah.
North. Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to it, because like you said, there is something that it's not just you are filling others' buckets and when you serve as a pastoral musician, but your bucket gets served as well. You get filled as well. And so it's a beautiful thing, that symbiotic relationship between congregation and servant leaders that lead worship every week. And so we touched base a little bit about like hints and so forth in our journey, our storytelling about how we hints that we knew that it was time for change. You gave two great examples about how musicians work. We don't post jobs on Indeed.com. It's a text, it's a phone call. Hey, do you know somebody? And it's really a networking um, amazing networking thing. And so that's why it's really important as musicians to be careful of transitions and so forth, because art networking and such, it follows wherever we go. And we want to be able to have closed chapters, having peace so that we can open up new chapters later on. And they all kind of complement and work all together, which is really neat.
Um,
Yeah. So I think for me, what helped me was listening to those little hints, things that rubbed me the wrong way, like, it's time, maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe I need to go here. It's not just a negative feeling. I think also that the big thing uh, is to be open to being a little bit on the weird side. Like I said, embracing ritual for me was a huge, that's very different growing up in the American Baptist tradition. We don't do ritual, right? It's the R word. Having that and making space for all the feelings. But one of the things that surprised me most was, and as a takeaway, I hope that whether you are in an office job or a pastor or a college student, especially those that are graduating right now, or even if you're getting married and so forth, is that do not try to set like the calendar and your feelings to line up, because they don't. And don't get discouraged if like, okay, I haven't been in my position for like 3 weeks now. I should be over this. Or there's a time for grief, a time for joy. And I think that's important for folks to realize that the calendar or the clock may not line up with what your heart, what your body's saying to you, what your head's saying to you. Um, and that's
Absolutely.
okay. And that's okay. We make plans and God laughs, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, very much so. And I think for me, what gave me such peace was that knowing that when I said no, I'm going to move on and do something, not move on. I don't like that phrase. Move somewhere else, because not on sounds like it's going up. That's not the case. Um, that it was an opportunity for you to say yes, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we like whenever we're transitioning from one place to the other, I think it's very worthwhile to think that I know like the discomfort of saying no to something because some people don't like saying no. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I used to be the worst people pleaser ever, and I kind of am in many ways. But I have been working on that for a long time
Mm-hmm.
already. And the discomfort of saying no, like, oh, what if I burn this bridge?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we gotta, I think that we have to trust that A, we're not burning anything,
That's right.
being honest, and B, yeah, we also need space. Like if something, it's not necessarily what you in your heart of hearts know that it's your vocation,
Hmm.
um, at this time or in life or this moment, I don't know, um, then you can say no confidently and something else will work out. You know, I always say that um, I I got married and I don't know how we have been making it work financially. And I
Hmm.
am in awe that, it works. It just
It
something,
does.
we get, we get crafty, we get inspired, and we do it, and it's, I think what you say, that's why I think what you say about saying no equaling saying yes to something, I think that's very special. And
Hmm.
I can only imagine being in your position,
Hmm.
like 20 years, and then being like, okay, well, it's time to transition in this way.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And I think those little those little hints, those little moments, are like almost like the door cracking open for you to like figure out really what does God have in mind? What is really going on? Putting these all these pieces together and how is that going to look? And it really was, I can testify that this, along with several other opportunities and times I've had where it is that cliche, it's a leap of faith, where you do not know, where you don't see the bottom. And you're like, okay, God, let's just do this because I trust you. And I trust that you have a plan for me. And here we go. Um, and then to come, here we are, a year and a half, year and, X amount of months later, and I'm fine. You're fine. And
see, back over there at North Hills, they're fine too.
they're fine too. Exactly. And it's not weird. It's
Yeah,
not weird. And I think it's not awkward. And so it's just, I don't think folks celebrate enough of these opportunities to see the bigger picture of where God is on the move, right? Where I felt that nudge. I said no, you said yes. I made a plan. You made a plan of how do we do this? How do we write that story in between those chapters? And here we are reaping the fruit of those choices that were purposely made and also obedient to the Spirit's call.
right. And obviously, I think that one of the reasons why we can confidently say that, at least in this particular case of transition at North Hills Community Baptist Church, that it went well is because we had the humility to kind of
Yeah.
accept it and be honest about things, about what the situation was,
Hmm.
without being uh, without being too-minded. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, I absolutely get what you're saying there for sure.
When
Um,
when when uh, when when I think when we talked about the transition and stuff like that, and you very graciously asked me if I minded, I'm like,
yes,
what
that was
about
part of my plan. I didn't want to make you feel awkward or
yeah,
like stepping on toes or
I appreciate that, but that's that kind of thing is it's being mindful about where we are in the. I get really nervous when I don't know where I stand, and I think
Mhm.
like part of the good things that our congregation, the music ministry, that they what they did phenomenally is acknowledge and know where we are, where we were
Yes.
at that point, and what things were happening at the
Hmm.
moment, and it helps that at least personality wise, I seem to fit rather well with them.
Yes.
They felt like they could continue something was some things were not going to change.
Hmm.
Also, I think we also need to acknowledge how sometimes it's good to find something different, but be mindful of the important things that should continue to.
Yes. Yeah, asking the bigger questions of what are the values and priorities of this music ministry? And a lot of times those priorities and values are mutually shared across all musicians, really, whether they be professional, semi-professional, or just volunteer. Um, and for the music ministry at NHCBC, they really value enjoying the making of music. They value that it's not a performance, but it is a gift. It really is. And so they have some really nice theological edifices that they stand on there, which they have taught me really. They're amazing. And I think it was actually the bass that you mentioned, Gary, he said for whatever you asked me to sing tenor, bass. I think I sang soprano too as well. I don't know what parts I didn't sing, but
Yeah,
um,
I think alto you haven't,
I,
which
no, I
is
had no, I was alto at one point, a couple measures, but anywho's. But Gary acknowledged he's like, how awesome is this that I can be in your choir, in the seat under your baton, and
any other
it's
way
natural. It's natural.
of talking about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to add, Manny, before we wrap this up?
Gosh, I had something in mind, I forgot what it
That's
was.
usually the way it goes.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I just would like to thank you for this conversation and
Yeah.
for the opportunity to share this with those who will hopefully listen to our chat, and
Mhm.
if anything, just get if they can get at least one thing, it's just that it doesn't have to be weird.
No.
I mean, it can be weird, and you should like sit with that.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be, you know. It could be easy. Could
Yeah.
be easier than we think it is. I think that's true for a lot of what we think.
Yeah.
It can be easier,
Hmm.
and we can still kind of hang out, and even if it's not. Listen, like my dad remarried, and my mom is
Hmm.
really good friends with my dad's wife.
Hmm.
That can happen if we can celebrate Thanksgiving together.
Hmm.
Why wouldn't you, as the director of music emerita,
Hmm.
why wouldn't you be welcome to make music with us? This is your spot.
Hmm.
And and that's yeah, it's easy to think like, well, now I'm here. I don't want to feel weird, but
Hmm.
like, yeah, no, just see it as W's, the fact that you get one other person to support you as a minister is great,
Yeah, it is. And there goes my mind. I was about to tag on about why does this always happen? It's the musician's brain. I like to say I'm ADD, so I have to be OCD. I have to have all the letters so I can keep myself accountable. Um, but yeah, and I know what it was, in that even just having this conversation officially and sharing it with others is a ritual that helps cement in and celebrate and helps me come to terms and actually even helps me prepare myself when I go to the bench on June 1st. So yeah,
That's gonna be exciting.
yeah,
I'm gonna be there to see it, but
that's okay. You can watch us on the live stream.
yeah, for sure. But I'm pretty sure like it's gonna be cool for the band to kind of work with you again,
Yeah,
and for song leaders and everything. So
so it's
I would argue
awesome.
probably it'll be like, oh, it's like the old days, you know.
Oh, I don't know about that. We'll see. But so yeah. Well, thank you so much, Manny. I really appreciate this time. Um, I can't say enough about what an amazing musician and what a wonderful heart you have in all of this. And you have blessed me over and over again.
So have you, Heidi.
Thank you.